Got it.
Hello, dear listener, dear viewer. I'm joined by my dear friend, Mr. Samuel Carter, also known as Sam Architects, lead singer of the UK Metalcore phenomenon Architects. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to see your face.
It's so nice.
This time of night. I'm so happy to see you.
I know the time difference. I appreciate you staying up late for me. Thank you.
A pleasure. Don't worry, I'll be up for another probably 4 hours overthinking everything I did during the day. So
standard. I tend to fall asleep and then I would like to wake up at about 2 or 3 and then relive the worst moments of my life.
Yes, really hot. Really hot.
Really hot. The temperature. That's it, man. It's crazy.
Full body. Your body shames you instantly, like, oh God.
I know. I feel the embarrassment flushes again and again and again for like stupid shit I did 18 years ago. What's going on? What's good?
I feel very good. I feel happy today. I've just come back from playing football, which I do once or twice a week. But during the lockdown over here, there's a few of us that have been fans of football and played football when we were kids. But we started playing again, and I took control and started booking this place near us and started a little WhatsApp group and got people that are like self-employed or in bands or just friends of friends, and we play like a 6-a-side once a week, and it's carried on through coming out of it. But during COVID it was a really nice way to sort of see each other once a week and exercise together and just actually working as a team to try and do things. It was really good for everyone's mental health. But it's just carried on and we've loved it, and it's basically during the downtime of not being in a band is the highlight of everyone's week. It's so funny.
I love that. Yeah, because for essentially you just went from touring the world and playing enormous festivals and shows and headlining them a lot of the time to literally having nothing to do. That emptiness must have been really fucking hard.
Yeah, it was horrid.
Really?
But but we filled it with football. So there's like members of Architects, members of Royal Blood, the Excerpts, Rolo Tomasi. There's just so many members of bands that are there. Yeah, graphic designers, everyone that's involved. It's so lovely. But it was a hard time, I think, for everyone actually having to stop and confront, sort of without a choice, confront yourself, I think, because you had nowhere to hide, no running away and doing anything. It was like, okay, sit still and deal with this. And fortunately for me, I had a lovely fiance and my dogs, and a lot of couples I know haven't even got through this, this sort of 2 years of isolation. But I'm very glad that we made it through, and we're a really good team.
When you say a lot of couples, as in like mates of yours have been forced to sit still and their existential crisis, their existential angst comes up and their mental health falls to bits and the relationship hasn't lasted? Is that
I mean, the numbers of divorces in the UK are crazy through lockdown. Yeah, it's gone through the roof. That and suicide, which is always a good one. So it's obvious there that it's taken just such a massive toll on everyone's lives. I think with couples as well, I think it's that sort of thing I can see happening, because for some people, especially in the UK, I think some people go out the door at 6 a.m, don't see each other all day, come home at 7 a.m, at 7 p.m, sit on the sofa for an hour and then go to bed. They're used to being around each other for that hour or two in the evening. Whereas in my job, when I'm at home from tour, I'm around all the time, so whenever my fiance is around, I'm there. So we're kind of used to that exposure of being around each other all the time. But I think, it must have been really hard for some people, really hard. But it was really hard to be honest. I live with a lot of distractions in my life, as in traveling the world and playing shows and having I didn't realize actually how much of my life is a routine of like, you're going to be here at this time you have lunch, this time you sound check, this time you go out for dinner, this time you play the show, tomorrow you're here, and it's almost like my life was like 4 months ahead. I was looking at like, okay, so we're going to be in this country then, and they're here then, and then it's just like, oh, that's gone, everything's gone, you're here, that's it, make your own day sheet.
That's the thing, because you had people do that for you, right? Like, that's you got parented through months of life at a time in some ways. That's really fascinating.
It's funny, when we started doing press for the album, it was like a year into lockdown, and it would be like, okay, you're going to be speaking to this person at this time and this person at this time on Zoom, and I was like, great, I can't wait, let's go. If it'd be like 4 o'clock, I'd be like, okay, cool, the interview's in 5 minutes. Okay. Whereas before I'd be like, do I really have to do these interviews, please?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So for anyone who's not familiar with who you are and what you do, let's do a quick recap. Architects has been a band for what, 20 years?
16 or so. I think they started in 2003. I think they did. Pre me. Yeah, so 2003, yeah.
Oh,
so nearly 20 years.
They had a vocalist before you?
Yeah, I mean, this was Tom and Dan's like school band.
Right. Okay.
So they had one other vocalist who sang on the first like 7-song EP called Nightmares. And I've done the other ones, like 8 or 9 of them, however many there are.
And your latest record is For Those That Wish to Exist, and it came out, and it was number 1 in the UK, number 1 in Australia, and you haven't been able to tour on it, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, no. We've been able to play some smaller shows in the UK, but we've not been able to go anywhere else so far. But it's been amazing, really. Like, especially going back and playing those shows, like the record release shows. It's been incredible to be that close to people after that amount of time, and having like 600 to 1,000 people in your face, like screaming along so passionately is amazing, but also quite scary, because you're like, oh, okay, right, I've got to figure this out again. This is how do I speak to a room full of people? Good, okay. But lucky for me, I think I'm pretty honest up on stage, so it's I just kind of say like, this is fucking weird, isn't
it? As in like your anxiety, like you have had like a real social anxiety about performing again. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I've always suffered with anxiety and depression, and I think actually when you're in the swing of things, you especially with playing shows, you kind of forget. It becomes sort of like a routine almost, of like, first song I might be a little bit nervous, but then it will sort of ease out, and then you get into a tour and you're like, okay, cool, I'm comfortable here, I'm feeling safe, and you know what your in-ears are going to sound like, what the stage looks like, and you kind of get used to it. But yeah, coming back after a couple of years and playing not only like one song for the first time, playing like 7 or 8 new songs for the first time off of your record, and then being like, okay, now I've got to remember the words, I've got to remember how to sing it, I've got to try and somehow look cool, it's and also speak to a crowd and be like, and try and explain how everything's been for us, and how much they mean to us. And sometimes when you're on stage, you can't just be like, we happy, you happy too, good, like as much as I wish I could in those situations. So yeah, it's been like having to get in touch with that sort of performer, I think, which has been sort of asleep for a couple of years.
Where does your depression and anxiety stem from? Was that something you said you've always been a sufferer? Is that from childhood?
I think I wouldn't say always. I'd say going into my young adulthood, I think being in a band is not always easy. Traveling and being away is not something that comes very natural to me. Like, I'm not, if we're not on tour, I don't travel or go away. I'm just very comfortable with just sitting still. But I think I've always been quite anxious. I've always been like moving and shaking and tapping, and I've always just sort of been super hyper, I think, which can be quite tiring sometimes, and super aware, super socially anxious. When I'm out, I'm always like 100 miles an hour. But I think it was around the time probably just before Tom started getting ill, that I started feeling quite depressed, and then going through that was really horrible. But I think, yeah, just before Tom started getting really ill, I started taking antidepressants, which I was then on for 5 years. And yeah, I think working through that was super hard, and I don't think it's really been till recently that I think I found the right counselor to sort of help me through that. I think actually through the last couple of years, I've been with a new counselor who has just been absolutely incredible. Not to say that the people that I was with before weren't. I think sometimes it just clicks when you find the right person. You know, like, I more than often leave counseling sessions in tears, having, you know, had moments of like unbelievable moments, like door opening moments where I'm like, oh yeah, of course, you know, things you haven't thought about in years. But yeah, I think it's always been there. I just think just been able to sort of vocalize it a bit more in my adult years.
Hey, thanks for being super open about that, because I know a lot of people listening to this, your fans, will really find a lot of benefit in knowing that A, it's all right to struggle, and B, that you can get better, and that therapy and counseling and open, honest conversations with your community, but also with professionals, does work. You know,
absolutely.
I really kind of struggle at this moment in time where there's so much conversation online about social media, but I worry that people kind of embed their suffering into their identity. You know, like, it kind of becomes like an image and a shtick, and like, if I didn't have this, who am I without my pain? Because that's something that I've always, you know, I'm a bit older than you, and I guess I've been in therapy off and on for over 10 years, consistently for the last 5. And like you, I've had to see lots of different counselors and therapists to really find the good one. I always talk about like seeing a psychologist is kind of like dating, right? You like go out and like, you know, what's the vibe and what's the connection like, and then you meet the right one for you. But I think letting go of my sense of self that was I'm a victim of certain things in my childhood and experiences has been really liberating, you know, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not.
I think also with what you're saying, like, about finding the right person as well, there's so many different routes within psychology as well, you know, whether it's CBT, whether it be like talking,
EBT,
or whether and like whether it be like, I don't know, I've had it before with like sound therapy as well, where, you know, you follow the sound and then you go into like a sort of like deeper mental state, and like, was it where you follow the light with your eyes as well? I can't remember what that's called, but I've done that as well, and I think it's figuring out each route of what works for you, and not everything works, you know, not every bit of food or drink you pick up you like first time, you know. It's like you have to figure out when you're a kid what you like and what you don't like, and you know, it's super eye-opening. I think a big thing for me was just like not giving up. I think there's so many times throughout therapy where I was like, well, I've tried therapy, I've tried this counselor, and I've been on antidepressants here. I'm like, I'm never going to be fixed. I'm fucked. I'm broken. Like, and that's just me. Like, I'm just going to have to live with that. But I think it's like, I always try and say to people, it's like the most liberating and best feeling I ever find is that initial phone call or that initial email to a therapist where you're like, hey, I really need you. And like, it's taking a lot for me to say this to you, because it doesn't get harder than that. I feel like that's the hardest bit, because then you've opened up and that person is there to to help you and to try and guide you through that. That person is not going to be like, nah, you don't need this. They're like, okay, you've come to me, like, I'm okay, come here, we can go through this together, you know.
You said that you've been on antidepressants for 5 years. Is that something that you still?
I'm off them now. I'm off them.
Amazing.
I worked for, I was on them for 5 years, and I was on them. You know, I have no problem with them. I think they can be super important for people, and they can also be problematic at times. But I think for some people, I think there's just some people who don't get the same amount of as what's it called? Not sertraline.
Serotonin.
Some people don't get the same amount of serotonin as others, you know. And it's like, I was speaking to to my counselor about this recently, and some other friends, where they were just like, you know, I came off it, and actually I found my life was worse without them, so I went back on a lower dose. But when I initially went on, we have a thing called the NHS in our country, which is you know, the taxpayer pays for free healthcare. So it was when
all the Americans listening are like, wow, oh my God, that must be nice.
And I'm about to slag it off, and they'll be like, well, you should be grateful for getting anything. Well, it was just before Tom got ill again, like when his cancer sort of came back. And I was just at my wit's end. I was just lost, trying to be strong for everybody, trying to be the joker, trying to keep morale up, and try and look after everybody. I think that's all I wanted to do. But I think I was just burnt out, and wasn't aware how burnt out I was. So it all kind of hit me at once, and I felt like I was going crazy. And I had the best piece of advice anyone's ever given me was, if you feel like you're going crazy, you're not going crazy. Because if you were going crazy, you would never know you were crazy. And I was like, oh my God, it felt like someone took a boot off my neck when someone said that to me. And so I went to the doctors, and I was like, I didn't have enough money for my own counselor or anything. So I went there, and I was like, I need to see a counselor. I need to speak to somebody. I'm really suffering, and I'm struggling. And I explained everything that was happening. And the doctor, you know, said to me that it would be probably like a 2-month wait or a 3-month wait for me to be seen by somebody. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I don't have that time to do that. Because I was struggling so much. I was like, I'm struggling to get through this week. You know, every moment I wake up, I'm suffering. And the other option was was to try these antidepressants on a very low dosage, which I was quite terrified of at first, and then it actually really gave me a leg up to help start dealing with things, to sort of gave me a hug when I needed one. But then I think I found, like, after a while of being on them, especially when we came into the sort of first lockdown here, I was sort of using them it was, as much as I was going to counselling and stuff as well, it was sort of blocking me from going in deeper and trying to figure out what was actually going on within me and why I was still feeling this way. So I went to the doctors because I was feeling worse. I was just super, you know, I was in a really bad patch. I hadn't started seeing my new psychologist yet. And they doubled my dosage. And when they doubled it, it didn't answer any of the questions I had. And it just made me feel really, really numb and really sad. And just, I didn't have any way to sort of explain how I felt. And when I was on the smaller dosage, I was fine. It was great, but I think I went too far with it. And I got asked to be a godfather by my friends Sam and Emma. They asked me and my fiance to be the godparents to their daughter Addie, and I have been with her whole life, and she chose us to be her godparents. And she's nearly 7, and she wrote a letter and wrote a poem, and then there was a picture of, like, will you be my godparents? And my fiance burst into tears, and I just was like, the moment I read it, I was like, I need to get off these, because I should be feeling something here, and I'm feeling nothing other than, like, okay. But in my head, I'm like, I know this is a massive moment, and I know that this is one of the best moments of my life, So I'm grateful for that moment, because it was much like getting the #1 album. It was it was in the similar week where we got the #1 record, and it's something that I've worked for my entire life. And I had a split second of like, yes. And then I was like, now what? And I was like, okay. So that week was the week where I was like, I've found a new psychologist. I was like, I'm going to go to the best one I can find. I'm going to call the doctors. I called the doctors. I was like, I'm coming off antidepressants. I need you to tell me how to work my way off of it. Because at that point I was like, I just want to feel, even if it's sad. At this point, I would just want to feel something, because I was feeling nothing. And then, yeah, I slowly worked off, and then, and now I cry at adverts and stuff on the TV all the time. So it's, I didn't cry for like 4 odd years. And then now it's like, I see just videos of like dogs being rescued, and I'm like, okay. But it's great. It's honestly, it's so wonderful to feel, even if things can sometimes feel a lot, and I'm having to sort of relearn emotions. Some emotions I'm having to relearn how to sort of like be like, okay, this is how I deal with this, and don't react super fast. It's actually, yeah, talking like that, it makes you realize there's a long old journey to sort of get off them and to be back almost.
What have you done with your lifestyle that might be different? Anything?
I run now. I never ran before. I always thought it was crazy for crazy people. I was like, what? You're going to get tired for no reason. And now I'm aware that the run is not for, when I'm getting ready to do a run, I don't want to do the run. When I'm on the run, I don't want to do the run. When I finish the run, I'm like, you are set up for the day and everything is good. Because it's blissful. It's blissful finishing a run, or any form of exercise, or anything that I think makes you a bit uncomfortable. It's so good for you to be like, oh, you know what? I've earned sitting down and having a coffee right now. I feel like I've owed this to myself, rather than just sitting there doing nothing. So that, playing football, and just, yeah, trying to be a bit more creative, I think has been a big change. And just, I think just trying to be a nicer person and a better person, and learning about myself has been really good, especially with this counselor, trying to figure out certain things within myself that I want to look at and learn from, and being super vulnerable, really, I think it's been super key to getting through the pandemic.
Well, as your friend, I'm really happy for you. Like, I'm really stoked to be sitting here talking with you and hearing all of this.
You're the best, Richie. That's the fact. You're the best. You encourage me to be a better person, I think, and I think always whenever we're around you, it creates such a massive sense of joy within the band. Whether it be us getting up and going and working out on the green of somewhere where I'm scared I'm going to get bit by a spider, or whether it be us getting up and going swimming, or just ordering stupid food, or like whatever. We have such a good time, which is and the way you live your life and the way you speak, which is why I've ended up with essentially a Richie shin tattoo. So
I was telling Claire, I was like, he's got the biggest tattoo of my name. I should probably do him a solid and match it up on my own shin.
No, please don't. It's too big. You don't want to go. I might get an
enormous Sam. No, it's not my ex-girlfriend. It's my mate in the UK.
That's why everyone's like, "Who's Richie?" Like,
well,
you may meet him one day.
There's an experimental gay lover phase.
Yeah, it's not a phase, man. It's real love.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I don't know what to say. You made me feel awkward and bashful. I think one of my dreams, and I have zero idea about how to create this, would be to take a lot of what we've just been talking about lifestyle changes and open and honest conversations, and figure out how to build a meaningful project within the music industry that didn't just talk about these things in hashtags, but would go on tour with bands or artists or festivals. You know, I think about the Warped Tour and how Brandon Shapiro from Bleeding Through used to have like a Rise Above Fitness workout area, right? Like how do you get the industry, because the industry doesn't have the money like it used to. You know, you think about like the 80s and 90s and how much money was in music. And they had these huge budgets to throw at artists to help them out. That's just not there anymore. But I would love to figure out how to do that, how to embed lifestyle change stuff in the music industry. Because
I think so much of it falls on the individual and in the bands. As you say, like there's not a lot of money within this world and within that. And Warped was great for that sort of thing, because it would be like every day we're going to be here doing this. But I think, as you say, I think it's discussing it and being open. I think for somebody like me, speaking about my mental health, it doesn't come easy, even though, you know, I write about it and speak about it and very open about it. I'm always almost like too aware of like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm just saying this for the sake of it, or I don't want people to think I'm just looking for fucking likes, you know. And there are people out there that do things like that do go out there and write these things, and you're like, it's not for me to say, but I think sometimes it needs someone to be super honest. And I think, you know, I'm not the most articulate and well-spoken person in the world, but I do truly care about everyone, whether it be animals, people. I want to try and use my platform for positive change. And I think sometimes I have to just get over that ego of like, no, people might think you're like lying, or like, oh, you shouldn't do this. Like, I'm like, I'm just going to say it, because even if one person reads it, or one person hears me speaking like this and then goes, okay, I'm going to do that. You know, whether it be like, whether I've rarely posted about my running, but at the end of last year, I set myself a goal of like a certain amount of Ks that I wanted to do from when I started to the end of the year, and I hit it, and I was proud, and I, you know, did a little video on the run where I'd sort of had a moment where I really didn't want to go for a run. I really didn't. It was horrible outside, and I went for a run, and then I put on a song, and I ran along the seafront, and the sun started setting, and there was an enormous amount of people on the seafront, and everybody was there with their phones. And normally that would annoy me so much that there was all these people there. But I actually, just for that moment, just took a big breath, and I just ran through and smiled at everybody, because everyone was with their families taking pictures of that moment and like loving it. I ended up just breaking down in tears when I got to the end, because I was so full of joy. And that was in my process of coming off of antidepressants. I was like, I'm gonna film this, because this is real. Like, I'm not gonna pretend. I was like, just turn the camera on, like all snotty and sweaty and horrid. And I was like, if you feel like shit, go for a run. Please try and do something. And if you're not okay, then speak to somebody, because I've been there throughout the last couple of days. I've been in a horrible place, but I've come out the other side, and you can make change. And I know I've completely interrupted with what you were saying. I've just gone on a tangent, but it is so important for people to know, because I feel like you can't just sit there and wait for change to come. You have to kick yourself up the arse and go and try and change something in your life. I'm not suggesting that you have to run 10K a day, or you're a failure and that's not going to make you feel better. I do like 2K, 3K, 4K, whatever I can do. Or like a change, a hobby change. If you're a big drinker, try not drinking. If you're a big smoker, try and cut smoking out. Like, changes and challenges, I think, are what wakes up these little pathways in your brain that get it excited. Like being like, yes, I'm going to do this, you know?
I do know. I'm just sitting here like, preach a good word, dog. Like, that's what's up.
Like, but that's the thing. Like, I'm not perfect by any means. I enjoy a drink. I enjoy a drink. You know, maybe once a week I'll have a couple of beers, and I consider myself very fortunate to be able to do that, because I know that for a lot of people, they can't just pick it up and have one or two. They're in for the whole night, and then it becomes destructive and can be a horror. Alcohol can be a horrible thing. For me, I'm very lucky that I don't have that sort of wake up and go again, or even do 2-3 days in a row. I'm like a one a week kind of guy, but a 1 day a week kind of guy. But yeah, I think you have to try. You can't just expect change to come to your door and just open up and go, you're fixed. Because it's actually the journey of getting to that place is where you do the best healing, I think.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. It's not even like there's an end point. Like, you don't just get fixed. You actually have to build your whole life around staying mentally.
And isn't it funny? You have to remind
well.
yourself of that all the time.
All the time.
You have to be like, no, I'm not fixed. No, we go again.
It's not that we're not fixed. Maybe we are healed to some degree, but we have to, or maybe we are healed. Maybe we have shut the door on our grief at the loss of a friend, or the shitty stuff that happened to us as kids, or the fucking breakup we went through, or whatever the impetus of our pain might be. But we have to also stay well, right? Like, you get better, but then you have to keep things in place as a lifestyle forever to to stay up, or to, if not stay up, to stay resilient for the next time something shitty happens, because it's inevitable that shit stuff is gonna emerge in our lives. Like, that's like a given. Everyone we know is gonna die, and we're gonna get old, and we can't become too attached to anything, like because it will change. And if our happiness is dependent on a particular thing being there forever, I would say that we're setting ourselves up for suffering.
Absolutely. I think a big thing for me is learning that change, and things don't stay the same, and that's okay. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think that ties into the start of this conversation about how the fucking global pandemic took your whole lifestyle as a traveling musician in a way, and you've done an amazing job adapting to the circumstances that you've found yourself thrust in. Yeah, that's really powerful.
I think if everything did stay the same, we wouldn't love it as much. We wouldn't love the things as much, because if something's there forever, you take it for granted. I know my dogs won't live forever. That doesn't mean I don't want them to live forever. It means I love them with all my soul, and that's an amazing thing. That's love, isn't it? That's love. I think that's why you see couples together into their 80s, 90s that have been together since they were kids. That's their amazing. Love wouldn't be as special as if it was just like, I'm just with this person. Isn't it funny how we just never die? We just float around this bit of rock.
Yeah. It's
a bit weird though. It's not as green. A bit weird. It's not as green as it used to be, isn't it? Yeah, a bit weird, isn't it?
Hey, where's your profound love of animals come from? Because you are a profoundly empathetic person, but you have a particular love for wildlife, and your band Architects publicly advocates for organizations like Sea Shepherd. Is that something that you grew up with?
I grew up in a nice little village just outside of Brighton, and my dad has always been loved wildlife. We've always had binoculars in our house, looking at the birds in the garden, and we've always had dogs in our family. And
you're a bird spotter.
Yeah, I am. I've got. Where am I? I've got some here. I have them up. I might have them in my bag from when I went on tour. But I love it, man. I love it so much. I could tell you so many birds. But we've always had that about, and I think my dad's always, with having dogs about. That's been a big thing for me. And we had cats and stuff when I was growing up. It's understanding that you can form relationships with animals that are like brothers and sisters, and you do form this. I've always had a big love for them. So growing up and touring the world, and actually it's quite eye-opening when you travel around the world when you're quite young. Like when I went, and you go to places and you're like, I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that animal. And then you're like, well, why would I eat that animal, but I'll eat that one? And you're like, oh shit, okay. And then it sort of builds from there, where you just, I don't think any life should suffer for me. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I can live a life where I don't have to live like that. I go to the shop and I buy my food. I'm not a hunter-gatherer. And back in the day, it may have been different. You weren't going and getting soy sausages, but now that is life, and I can make that choice, and I do proudly make that choice. And I feel healthier and better for it. But yeah, I can't, there's something within me that I can't even walk past, like a seagull or a pigeon or a dove or anything, without seeing if it's okay and wondering if there's anything I can do for it. And it's everything. Every animal I see, I try and see if it's okay. And we had like last year, we had a couple of years back, we had a baby pigeon fell in our garden. It fell off the roof, and it was this tiny little orange fluff ball. And a lot of the animal charities, I didn't know a lot of them at the time, but I only knew like a couple of the main ones in Brighton, were like, we can't do anything there. It's like, it's a pest. I was like, it's a life, so it's not a pest. And then I spoke to some sanctuaries and got in contact, and they sort of taught me what to do. Me and my fiance nursed this pigeon back to life. I called it Sergeant Pecker, after Sergeant Pepper's by the Beatles. And yeah, we nursed it back to life. And every day, Sophia, one of my dogs, would run out and go and say hello to it, and they would interact. And then yeah, one day it flew off and flew the nest, and it was a really lovely moment of watching this thing that had fallen off and would have just been left to die, to be like, we're going to save you. And yeah, it was amazing. So I think that also helps, walking past animals like that and being like, oh, okay, cool. We helped raise one when it was a tiny little baby, to then see like all life is like that. But that was a great experience, because I then went and started where I did a couple of days working at some sanctuaries with places that had helped me, and cleaned out like 50 cages for hedgehogs. I changed like 50 hedgehog nests and worked with some foxes and fed some baby blackbirds. And I think, it's funny because I'm just this guy that just shouts in this band, and you think he would be like super intimidating and like rah, but I'm just like, I just love animals, man. Just give me some tofu.
I love that. Yeah, it is a really I interviewed Serge Tankian once, the singer of System of a Down. This is years ago, when I used to do a little radio show. And Serge was talking about how people in heavy music are really well adjusted, because they express everything that is a dark emotion through their music. And they're just these chilled out vibe merchants who look after hedgehogs like yourself. Do you think metal and hardcore gets a bad image that's not warranted? Like, people just don't understand the scene?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a really great community there. I think, especially through hardcore and stuff, growing up and getting DVDs from shows about animal liberation, and Sea Shepherd's obviously always been kind of aligned with heavy music, and yeah, it's a great scene. I think it's a place where outcasts can feel really at home. And I think it's really the hatred towards it often is misguided, really. I think people kind of see heavy music as like the person that shot up the school that listened to Marilyn Manson, and back in those, people just base their whole opinion on things like that, where it's like, no, there's like a big hardcore show happening in America in a couple of weeks, where there's a toy drive, where to get into the show you have to bring a toy to give to a kid, and you see like can drives, you see bands like ourselves and other bands that have Sea Shepherd merch tables bigger than their merch tables. You see this family within it. And I think it's really important for bands to do this, to talk about these things, because I think you cannot. But for me, I'm like, how would I sleep? I want to fight for good all the time. And sometimes that really takes it out of me, and I have to take a step away and sort of remove myself and not watch things that can be quite upsetting. because it really gets to me. You know, if I see a video of a hunter killing a fox, it sits with me for a week, and I'll cry. And every time I think about it, I'll cry. And when I see foxes in my area, I'll cry. But that's when I'm strong, that's what sparks my fuse. That's my, like, I will bring you down. I will stop this. I will try my hardest with shouting out these organizations. And it's knowing when to fuel the fire and when to just let the embers burn just a little bit less bright.
Yeah.
They just don't have to go out. They don't have to go out. That fire doesn't need to go out. It just doesn't need to be fully flaming the whole time.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. That's a really powerful piece of wisdom that you're sharing there. Because I think when we're passionate people and we care about causes, we can burn ourselves out, and we can also burn the people around us with our well-meaning righteousness. And
it's knowing when to bring that stuff up, isn't it?
It is. You're a person, you have the internet, like you see how much of a fucking toxic space it is now, from well-intentioned people just screaming into the void about things which are really good things to scream about, but it's become destructive rather than constructive. Very intense. Because if you're paying attention to what people say, and these people you admire and you like and are friends of yours, you want to give what they've written the time of day. You don't just want to be like, yeah. You read it and you're like, okay, what? All right, I didn't quite think about that, but that's important. And then you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, and that's really important. And then you're like, it's 8:30. I've not fed the dogs yet, and I'm already like about to cry. Sometimes you're like, you know, you gotta just know when. And I think you're great for that online as well, is when you post and you're so aware of like when to take a step back from social media for your health. I am now. In my 20s, when I was going through university and studying politics and like trying to be all the things, I was painful and kind of judgmental and self-righteous. But that was, I guess, before I had a Twitter account. And as I've matured as a person, I was thinking about this yesterday, as I've matured as a person and I've healed a lot of my own dysfunction, or come to terms with my trauma, which is a word I suppose some people might think is overused, but I've been able to step back from my politics and my real desire to make a social change, and separate my identity from what I do, and it makes me happier and mentally healthier. Whereas does that make sense? And I think it makes me more constructive.
I think a lot of it is growing up with the internet. When I was a kid, we didn't have phones that had internet on. We didn't have phones for a long part of it. You know, I remember my first phone where I could text my mum and be like, I will be home at this time, you know. And life before that was hanging out with my friends, skateboarding down to this little beach and sitting at the beach for hours, just talking. Nobody looking at their phones, just conversations. Some of it would have been dumb shit. Some of it would have been really eye-opening. Some of it would have been quite shocking, probably, at points. I think it's just that learning. But now we see kids doing it on the internet, where they say dumb shit, they say shocking stuff, and then but it's out there forever then. You know, whereas when we were kids, it'd be like, if someone said something, I'd be like, that's not funny, man, you can't do that. Or like, you can't, what? You know, you'd have like conversations, whereas now it's like people have that with strangers. And people get cancelled, or people make fucking dumb mistakes. It's a weird world, and I think, continuing that and growing up and being in a band, the internet is an amazing thing for architects to be where we are. You know, we were coming out off the back of MySpace, which opened the world to us. You know, for people to be able to hear our band and to be able to go on tour and book tours. Dan used to book tours through MySpace himself. And then, you know, the band got bigger and Facebook and everything, you know, it helps us get us around. But, you know, it can take a fucking mental toll on you to be there if someone's having a bad day and you say something or release a song that they don't like on first listen, they will let you know. And if you're not prepared for that, you're like, what did I have to do? I just announced the tour. Sorry, I'm not playing your home. I'm not like, I'm never going to listen to you. You don't come here. And you're like, I don't book it.
I think social media makes people feel like they are the center of the universe, and everything has to revolve around them and their worldview. And if you don't like acknowledge that this one person living in, I don't know what's a small fucking place in England, I don't know, some fucking shire somewhere. Like some fucking shire, then you're a terrible person.
Why aren't you bringing the arena tour here to this town where there's two people that like punk that don't even like metal?
I know.
That's why we're not.
I know, it's crazy because it's literally impossible to.
Yeah.
It's literally impossible to please everyone and.
But isn't it so weird that we try
it.
and we're so shocked when people are annoyed and we're like, oh, okay, like I'll share this, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then someone's like, hey, why the fuck are you doing that? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm the same. I try really hard to like put some like well-intentioned message out there, or a lot of my actual work, the money that I make comes from leading social change conversations. Yeah, present some concept, or you might, I don't know, be a bit clumsy in a delivery, and then there's all this what about, or fuck you, or fuck
I did a thing once where it was a while ago, and I thought about getting rid of Twitter, and I just did a tweet where I was like, hey everybody, hope you have a great day, peace and love. Someone replied being like, fuck you. I was like, that sums up the internet. That sums it up.
It really does, man. It really, really does, no matter how hard you try. But this is the thing, we know that you're never going to please everyone, but it still surprises us and even hurts us. Like when people are fucking awful.
I think what scares me is thinking about the younger generations coming up that are in school now, that have phones and have people being able to get to them all the time. I think when I was in school, it was like I'd finished school and then there was people that I wouldn't see until the next day I was at school, or I wouldn't see for however many weeks off we had in summer holidays. I'd have my close friends that I would, go down the beach with, and the people that I loved. But say you're someone at school that feels awkward and is like, doesn't want to see those people. People can be at you all the time. I think it must be a horrible place to be a kid with bullies, and you see what trolls are like with musicians and everybody. Imagine bullies in your school being able to get at you all the time. It's a weird thought. It's one that I always think about. I don't know why.
No, it's a real thing. Kids kill themselves off the back of it. I don't know if you've seen it happens to adults too. I don't know if you caught the latest Dave Chappelle special, but it was powerful, man. And he talked about his that's all right. But he talked about his friend who came out in defense of one of his specials, and she was a trans woman, and she got dragged so hard by Twitter that she threw herself off a building and killed herself. Like it's really been sitting with me, that story, because that's just representative of a broader problem, because that shit happens all the fucking time.
That's it. It's a horrible world. It's a horrible world. I think social media wise especially I don't know what it is about Twitter that makes it worse, but it seems that a lot of horrible people gravitate to where their sole intention of the day is to A, either harm somebody, or B, get a response for harming somebody. And it's a horrible place.
That's the other thing though, man, is that like social media is really negative, but the world's actually pretty, like, sure, there's a lot of fucking problems. Your band sings about like social issues and existential suffering, but there is good news. There's heaps of good fucking news out there, right?
Incredible stuff every day.
And we never talk about it.
No. And that's what's important, I think, is posting things that are important as well. I think for every horrible, dour thing and dour indictment of the world and where we're heading, I will post another thing that's like, but look at this positive change. This small thing has created this, and this is happening. You know, like today I saw this amazing new tool that they've got. I think I posted it on my Instagram. It's called Ocean Cleanup. And it's this amazing thing that's going out and sucking out all the fishing nets and all the plastic and horrible rubbish that has filled that toxic garbage island in the middle of the sea. And that has been on trial for a few years, and now it's finally working. And the people that have invented it are out there now taking all of this out of the ocean. And especially after watching something like Seaspiracy, you're like, wow, this is such an important breakthrough. Even things like seeing every single car company move to electric now. They're all trying to make money. I know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, it's still greener. You still see these companies doing it. McDonald's has just released a vegan burger in the country, in England, the first time ever. I know what they're doing. They want to make money. They want to go there, but that is a good thing that option is there for people or somebody to try it and go, oh, it tastes kind of similar. Like I can do this. It's because I often think we're made to feel guilty about every little piece of recycling. It has to be in the right place, and we have to not have 2 showers in one day and try and do the right thing all the time. And you know, but in reality there's about like however many companies, like 80 companies or something in the world, that 7 or 8 companies that are in control of 80% of the emissions that are happening, like bad emissions, and they're in control of it. But now you're seeing them try and go greener for business. So the change is there. It's being demanded. So you have to take the small wins when you can.
Yeah, I agree, man. I appreciate you saying that, because I had spent a lot of my time on social media identifying social issues, and I do try and offer solutions too. But I think just talking with you now makes me go, well, you should balance that out with talking about shit that is changing and like some of the positives, so that people have hope.
It's hard though. It is hard because social media, it's a lot of the things that get a lot of the likes and stuff are shocking things that can be reshared because they're so shocking that you feel like you have to get it for your friends and family and fans to see. But sometimes people actually would want to see a nice little rescue dog licking a cow to start their morning. Sometimes people need to see that, you know, a bit of like fucking hell, and then oh, that's really nice, you know, like the yin and the yang, you know.
Yeah, I do know. Hey, I've taken enough of your evening off you. It's been super nice to talk with you. Thank you so much for making time.
I'm sorry for probably talking over you through nerves, getting too passionate and just talking non-stop and losing track of where I am and then talking about something else, but roundabout finishing up where I started.
Can you not be sorry? That was wonderful. It was great to talk with you. I hope I can see you next year.
We will see you next year, Richie. We will make it happen. I believe it in my heart.
We'll figure it out, man. Yeah, I'll come to the UK if you can't come to the South Pacific.
The good times are coming, Richie. We'll make it happen.
Okay, brother. I love you very much. Take good care.
Love you, mate.
Yeah, give everyone a hug for me, huh?
Oh, always.